appears we have a governor who either doesn't understand the magnitude
Struggling to rebound from the pandemic.
Over the next 2 months, I think there are going to be two issues that are going to dominate policy discussions at the state level. The renewal or replacement of 421A, property tax break, and the possible passage of good cause eviction. Obviously in the state budget discussions, there were a number of housing policies that were under consideration. The potential legalization of accessory dwelling units, easing up of zoning rules to allow for the conversion of distressed hotels and offices into housing, the potential lifting of a cap that would allow more residential space in New York City, all of which were thrown out.
Right.
The replacement program for 421A was also part of budget discussions, did not make it through. I think with these other policy issues, they don't have the same kind of urgency that 421A and good cause eviction have right now. I'm curious, what you've been seeing on the good cause eviction front, what kind of momentum that has right now.
Yeah, definitely some solid momentum. So it seems like tenant advocates, bi-monthly or so, have been holding rallies, both in Albany and also in New York. Right before the eviction moratorium expired, they did a walk from the library to Hochul's office downtown. 10 people were arrested. So they're pushing pretty heavily, boots on the ground sort of momentum to get the word out. I've also heard they're doing phone banking and just connecting tenants to representatives so they can get their point across that this is a protection that needs to be in place as soon as possible. On the other end, landlord groups are pulling out the same sort of stops, which is kind of novel for them because they're usually the money guys, as opposed to the people who are, doing the phone banking. But they started a campaign called Homeowners for an Affordable New York, which is calling households, telling them about the negatives of good cause eviction for homeowners, and offering to connect them to a representative so they would be able to voice their opinion and hopefully, let Albany hear what they have to say.
Both these issues, there's a lot at stake for developers and for tenants. 421A is billed as tax break that is necessary for any multifamily construction in the city. The mayor of New York City has pushed for this replacement program to go through. Some of the biggest unions in the city are also pushing for this policy to go forward. It's set to expire June 15th, so very limited time to either replace it or renew it. But I guess, what do you see being sort of the main issues for tenants right now in regards to good cause? What's at stake for them?
Rents in the city are bonkers right now. We've seen them hit records the past 2 months, so February and March. They're currently up 40% from this time last year, so people are seeing $1,000 rent increases, which isn't sustainable. It has the potential to drive people out of the city, to displace renters of color. That's one of the largest issues there. And then you also have renters who throughout the past few years struggled to pay their rent. The rent relief program, which was supposed to provide them with funds to make them whole so they wouldn't have this debt, that has been sort of, I don't want to say a failure, but it's there's been a bunch of hiccups with it. It still doesn't have enough money to cover the 180,000 renters who are outstanding. So there's just this sense that the affordable housing crisis has gotten worse and tenants need greater protection so they're not going to be driven out of their homes.
One of these policies is a big priority of developers. The other is major priority for tenant advocates. I could see a scenario where either side tries to use the other policy as leverage to get their policy passed this session. I could also very easily see neither policy move forward before the end of the session. I think in the case of the replacement program for 421A, big criticism was that it largely replicated the existing program. There is a lot of the opposition too is just centered around fundamental opposition to the concept of incentivizing development in this way. So that resistance may stand in the way of this replacement program or, renewal moving forward at all. I'm curious if you think that there's a way that good cause could be amended that would potentially pave the way for it moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, so good cause, there's like two major aspects to it. One is this rent cap. If you are facing eviction in housing court and your rent has been raised above 3% or 1.5 times the regional inflation rate, you have the ability to use that as leverage to say to the judge, I shouldn't be evicted, and then your rent could get knocked back down underneath that threshold. I think if that threshold was a little bit more vague or flexible, it could potentially satisfy the landlord lobby. In New Jersey, for example, they have good cause eviction, but the term used for what the threshold is that is too high is unconscionable. So it's a bit more up for debate, and it creates some wiggle room. So that could be one aspect. The other part of good cause eviction that is contentious is that it allows for automatic lease renewals. And the argument there among owners is it would incentivize tenants to just stay in their apartments for a long time, which can be good because you create, a relationship with your landlord. Relationships are good, but it would also reduce the supply of apartments if people stay there, which could drive up rents on, the units that are available. Or if that was removed from the bill, it could be a little bit more attractive to the landlord lobby.
There are 2 more months left of the legislative session, so I guess we'll wait to see what happens.
We will.